Hey guys, welcome to another video for anatomy. In this video, I will be discussing the outer ear. Now, towards the end of the video, I want to discuss a few other things that involve the middle ear and inner ear that I missed in the previous video. A couple of tidbits of information that I think you'll find fascinating in regards to how sound is processed and how we adjust to different levels of sound and so on. So as you look at the ear has a really cool functional design to it. It's kind of like an antenna that's designed to absorb as much sound waves as possible, and it funnels all of that sound. Let's talk about those features. So you have the outermost part called the helix, and then another feature. Now there's a lot of features to the outer ear. I'm only going to highlight a few that I want you to know. You have the helix, you have the antihelical fold, and so as sound continues to travel, you have this space here, this cavernous space called a concha. Okay, when you hear the word concha, I know for myself, I think of a concha shell in the ocean. And so the sound is trapped, it's funneled into this space called the external acoustic meatus. Okay, so the external acoustic meatus, about I would say the first third or so, is surrounded by fatty tissue. Okay, and you notice that fatty tissue is in the lobule, okay, your earlobe. So you play around with the ear, you notice that it's really soft to the touch and very easily manipulated, and that's because it's fatty tissue. Unlike the top portion of your ear, which has fatty tissue, but it also has cartilage called auricular cartilage. And so the first third again is fatty tissue, and then as you make your way inside the ear, the last 2/3 of the outer ear is surrounded by your temporal bone. Okay, that's your temporal plate in the skull. All right. In fact, you know what? Let me take a second real quick and let me show you this specific spot. So in the next image I'm going to show you, we're going to take off all the soft tissue, all the flesh, the fatty tissue, the cartilage, and the skin, and even the muscle, and just show you the temporal bone so you can see this little hole here, this little cave, if you will, and what it looks like without all this soft tissue on it. So give me a second here. Let's go to your skeletal system. Where's it at? Skeletal system. And let's go to, nope, that's not where I wanted to go. Let's go to the skull. Okay, let me know if you see it. There it is. All right, so when we go to the skull, you take a look right here. So here's my temporal bone, right? Again, I've taken off all the fatty tissue, the cartilage, and you see that little cavern right there? Yeah, that's called the external acoustic meatus. That's the last 2/3 of the outer ear, and then of course it kind of that external acoustic meatus turns into a, where's it at? Right there. That's the internal acoustic meatus. That's where the nerve goes into the brain, right? And of course, this is the foramen magnum. Yeah, let me back up a little bit and get some perspective, right? So we're looking through the base of the skull, and there's the internal acoustic meatus, which starts here in the external acoustic meatus. So inside of this temporal bone is where you find the cochlea and the semicircular canals in the middle ear. All right, so let's go back. All right, so here we go again, outer ear. So as I mentioned before, this is the temporal bone. All right, let's see, outer ear. Is there anything else that I want to discuss in the outer ear? Yeah, something to think about. So as sound, remember, sound is energy waves that are traveling through air molecules and space between you and the origin of the source of the sound. And as sound travels into the external acoustic meatus and it goes and it's activated, it activates the tympanic membrane. See if I can go in there a little bit. Sound is actually amplified 21 times more than what its origin is. So that's a pretty cool fact, the fact that it's amplified. So you're hearing my voice right now. The only reason you can hear my voice is because the mechanism of hearing, the tympanic membrane and the auditory ossicles, they amplify the energy that's going into your ear and makes it actually audible for for your ear. Now, let's say you're at a concert and the music is blasting super loud. And I know we discussed this in class. We discussed the two smallest muscles in the human body, your tensor tympani. So this muscle here is a slow twitch muscle. It's slowly activated to really, really loud sounds. So if the loud sound persists and it doesn't go away like in a concert, because you're sitting in a concert for like an hour or 2 hours or so, or you're listening to music super loud for a really long time, this muscle takes about half an hour to fully activate. And as it condenses, as it balls up, it actually keeps the hammer from being initiated by the tympanic membrane. All right, so it's kind of preventing you from going deaf. Now, I mentioned before again that this is a slow twitch muscle. So if you've ever wondered why, you leave the concert and your ears are still kind of dull, you can't really hear as well still, that's because this muscle, again, it's a slow twitch muscle. So it'll take about half an hour for it to completely relax, and then that'll cause your hearing to go back to normal. Pretty interesting, huh? Now, what about those really loud, sudden sounds? Well, for that, we're going to go to our stapedius, right? And this muscle prevents the stapes from activating the oval window. And this is where you hear that really loud ring, the ringing in your ear. In fact, there's a condition that escapes me right now. I forgot the name of it, but it's a condition that World War II people who go into war have this condition where they hear the constant ringing all the time, and it gives them these enormous migraines, and it just stresses them out so much so that it drives them to the point of suicide, actually. And after World War II, they noticed a high rate of suicides by veterans, and a lot of those veterans that committed suicide were complaining, had a chief complaint of a constant ringing in their ears. So listening to really loud, now of course there's nothing as loud as what they went through, but for you guys who, like, and myself included, who like to put earbuds in your ear or listen to music really loud, that's something to consider, that you can actually permanently damage your ear. So in any case, I did mention before in other videos how your cochlea is the chief portion of the inner ear that is activated for and processes sound, the sound energy. And then that energy, as you can see, this cochlea is innervated by a cochlear nerve. Okay, so this is a nerve that's going to go into the skull, because let me back up a little bit. Recall that this is all inside of the temporal bone. So the cochlea is innervated by the cochlear nerve, and then I want to zoom in a little bit more. And then our semicircular canals, okay, these are the guys that are responsible for the balance that we have in our body. So there are tiny little calcium rocks, if you will, that are in these semicircular canals, and they're in this fluid. And we'll discuss this in greater detail later. But they're in this fluid, and there's also a fluid in the cochlea that is activated. And as this fluid moves, the rocks move, and that kind of gives you your orientation. And then, of course, let's take a look at that nerve. Okay, this is the vestibular cochlear nerve, right? So these signals, these waves by the fluid and the motion of the rocks and the tiny little hairs that you have in this cochlea organ, it activates these nerves, which send the signal to your brain, where your brain processes it. And then this nerve here actually is a facial nerve. This goes to your face. So it's primarily responsible for like your expression, like your, when you're smiling and upset, and you can tell it's because this is a nerve that controls all those muscles in your face that control that. So yeah, so let me go back to the skull, so I can give you some perspective of where this nerve goes. So we mentioned before that this is the external acoustic meatus, and then I showed you earlier the internal acoustic meatus. So let's go back to that real quick. All right, so here you see again the temporal bone, the external acoustic meatus. Let's zoom out a little bit, and here's the internal acoustic meatus, and you can see that nerve coming through. So all of those, this is nerve number 8. So actually, this is only showing one nerve. There's actually a couple more nerves that come through there, including nerve number 7, the facial nerve. And so you'll notice here that this nerve is connected to something else that should be familiar to you. So this is the vestibular cochlear nerve. All right, there it is right there. And of course, you see it going from the left side and the right side because you have two sides, right? And then it's connecting to the area where just above the medulla oblongata and just inferior to the pons membrane, right? And of course, all these signals go through your midbrain, and then they end up in your cerebral cortex, where all that information is processed, right? So every time you're playing basketball and somebody's calling for a pass, all of this stuff is being processed and through this way. You know, your balance is coming through this nerve, your balance, and you're processing your hearing. When you're in class and you're listening to me right now, you're listening to this video. And in fact, as I'm turning this head here, now your head may not be turning, but every time your head turns, okay, this nerve is the one that's sending those signals to your medulla oblongata and pons. So again, notice how it's right in the border of those two portions of the brain, and then it finally ends up in your cerebral cortex. Okay. All right. Well, that does it for this video. I hope this helped. I hope you found it as interesting as I did, and good luck in your studying.